Welcome to Speak Sex. I'm your host, Eurydice. I am Greek from the island of Lesbos, where the lesbians come from. I am a writer. I've written books on sex, the Sex Files column in many magazines. I'm a multimedia artist with the same theme, female sexuality. And I started this podcast, Speak Sex, because of this big need I see in the world around me as a woman, as a mother, as a lover, as a sexual being, to find a source of education and also freedom and a voice and articulation for our sexual needs and our sexual lives, which have been kept secret and silenced for all kinds of ill-advised reasons that I'm not going to go into right now. So speaking sex is specifically the quest to simplify the language of sexuality, both between lovers and also on a daily basis among friends, in family, and to make up for the complete lack of any sort of like formal education when it comes to sex in our lives. I am just, fascinated and saddened and torn by the fact that we spend 12 years, 18 years learning, numbers and scales and measuring and multiplication and language and grammar and how to sit properly and hold the fork and the knife properly and drive on which side of the street and all these other ways that are supposed to make it easier for us to be with each other, to homogenize us enough and allow us a way to translate who we are and what we feel to each other, and yet we never learn the most important part of it all, which is how to be sexual and how to, find pleasure in the procreation and the engagement of the species. So this is what this podcast is attempting to make up for and correct. Today's guest is a fellow writer who is based in London, and she is a sex expert by default through her writing work and now also her work for women's issues. She'll discuss it all for us. Her name is Shannon Leeman, and I'm very happy to have her today. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, Shannon, you have taken all kinds of educational classes, which kind of like proves me wrong because they are out there. More recently, in as a grown-up, when it comes to understanding sexuality and how to go about it, both physically and I guess mechanically, and also maybe verbally,
Emotionally, probably more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I started writing on cosmetic surgery specifically 25 years ago. And I slowly or quickly, I don't know, it depends on point of view, became this expert on this area of beauty by going to conferences, being in surgery, just being really open to something that in England nobody was talking about, enhancements or changes physically. There was a lot of shame regarding that at the time, and whisper, nudge, nudge.
Mm-hmm.
And then 9/11 happened, and nobody wanted to hear about boob jobs and facelifts and nose jobs and such. So I was sort of, my writing career just dried up. And then I thought, well, the world's changing. Maybe we want to hear more about intimacy. So I went to my editor and I suggested that, and she said, oh my God, well, we'll take anything that you can give us on that. And intimacy then led to sex and intimacy, sort of all wound up, trying to figure out how the two intertwined. And so I started taking courses online, in person, on the phone, anything I could get. And that's how that journey started. And it was an easy sell. because the world had changed really in the space of one morning about what it wanted to hear and experience from this ridiculous facade thing that I wrote about, and I am an expert on, to, internalizing how we felt about each other. And so that's basically how it started.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
The connection to 9/11 is very interesting,
Yeah.
that moment of reckoning. And
Well, there's certain moments I think that we all remember where we were. The Kennedy, depending on your age, Princess Diana, 9/11. I don't know for anyone else, listening right now, what a seminal moment was. And it was an opportunity to change and talk about something, a little deeper.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
For me, I had never stitched before, and I was a writer, and I had been an artist before that, and I always looked down on embroidery as like women's busy work that I did as a little girl with my mom and my grandma on the porch. And then 9/11 happened, and I was just immobilized. There was nothing I could focus on. I was so shocked. All my definitions shifted. So the only thing that calmed me down was, looking to embroider again.
Wow.
And then it changed my career. I became like a fiber artist for almost 15 years.
It has exactly the opposite effect on me, stitching, because I feel like perfectionist when I'm, and I worry about the holes, and that's probably, part of my issue altogether, worrying about the faults as opposed to loving them. I mean, I think there's, several women that are listening right now were Catholics. And I whilst I love parts of my religion, it was, fought a lot of the shame that came with that. So my personal journey was about dealing with that, with the shame that I experienced, from childhood.
Yeah, the original sin.
Yeah, that we
that
embody.
Narrative.
That narrative. God. And I was speaking to someone coming in about whether, how, if we assimilated that from our parents or, from the nuns, or I don't know what it is, but it's a constant battle for me, and if I've passed that on to my children. Anyway, so this writing thing started with a woman that you probably know, Mama Gina. Do you know Mama Gina in New York? Oh, wow. So this is the next person you need to speak to. She's got a school called the School of Womanly Arts, and she sees now thousands of people at a time. But when I saw her first in New York in her brownstone, which was a Pussy Palace, you'd go through the hallway, and it was all painted dark red. It was sort of all supposed to be a vagina you were entering. And she did a whole lot of different classes, and I did them all. I did them with my husband, without my husband, as a courtesan, online, on the phones. We did a lot of phone sex, and it opened up a whole new chapter of my life. Mama Gina, and you can Google her now. She's a force. And she just self-taught, and so that was the start for me of writing about orgasms, and even just kissing, and having my first experience of kissing another woman in front of a group of people. And I did a lot of that with my husband. So it was a real shift in our marriage. And then writing about it, and with my children being able to read. I ended up writing under a pseudonym because, of course, the shame, again, that your kids would have, that you were exposing yourself.
Yeah. Well, that's why I stopped. I was a sex writer in New York. That's how I made my living. I published 3 books, including with Scribner, about sex. And then I became a mom. And by the first 2-3 years, she came with me to the editorial meetings. And, I thought nothing would change. And then she went pre-K and kindergarten. And I realized that I had to stop for her sake. Because I couldn't tell people what I was doing, and there was definitely that whole social judgment and shame and an embarrassment that, even though I personally didn't feel, having lived in the West Village for decades, I had no consciousness of that. And even, in Miami Beach, it was very free. But once I entered the world of other moms and parents and teachers and PTA.
Yeah, what do you do?
I had no appropriate language for it. And I definitely did not want to put my daughter in a position where she feels embarrassed and humiliated, or kids make fun of her. But yeah, it is kind of, when you look at it from the point of view of logic, it's just inconceivable that we approach sexuality, which is one of the very few things we all have in common everywhere in the world, throughout all cultures, and which we need, and we need for the species to go on, we need for us to be healthy and stable, and we approach that as something so negative and dirty. I mean, it just...
Isn't it extraordinary?
The amount of brainwashing involved.
Well, interesting, when I look back about my shame, I used to put a pillow over my head during certain acts because I didn't want that scene, that pleasure. I haven't thought about that in a long time, that I did that. And, why? When I was in my late teens, I was doing that, So where did that behavior come from? But my son was at boarding school when I started this, and he wouldn't tell any of his friends that his mom was doing that. And then, of course, he couldn't help himself. And then, of course, I realized that all these boys were probably wanking. So a bit of pride in that and a bit of horror, I suppose. And then I became very open with them, and I felt really privileged that particularly my daughter came to me and asked me everything, how to give a blowjob, my son asked me what an orgasm felt like, which I told him it felt like a really, really good sneeze, because I thought he could relate to that. And so they became more open. I had a lot of literature in the house, a lot of books that, suddenly would disappear, and I realized all the teenagers were taking it and thumbing it. So a very open household, and yet still, perhaps my son, later when he was, a little older, didn't want to talk about it. Yeah. And my daughter, though, still is really open with me, which I love. I felt privileged.
But it is a real need. I mean, they don't all have the words for it, but definitely there is a need where they get to the age where they're hormonally motivated and they have no idea what to do.
Misinformation.
And then they just ask each other, and they get their information from like slightly older siblings. And, it's sad that what we call sex education is basically how not to get a disease. I mean, can you even imagine?
What was your sex education?
Well, I didn't have one because I went to school in Greece, and
there was nothing.
I was in an all-girls school with religious schooling.
I'm going to jump in and just tell you a funny little story. I found out about sex from Marcia Goodfellow in a dark closet. No, she's probably not around anymore. In a dark closet, in a very kind of sneaky, secretive way. It was very odd.
How old were you?
Wondering if I'd gotten my period yet. Maybe not, but my mother never told me anything about sex.
Well, we went to school together, my friend here, Star, and one of our classmates, Ingrid Lamar, her father came, he was Dr. Lamar, came and gave us sex ed, 6 weeks, 1 day a week. And as all I remember about it, because obviously it wasn't sinking in, is the last day. It just makes my skin crawl. The last day, I put up my little hand, plucked up the courage, and I said to Dr. Lamar, I understand what the hole in the front is, and I understand what the hole in the back is, but what's that hole in the middle? I just did not get that the vagina, I didn't get what it was. I just, at 6 weeks, and I still wasn't, I thought babies came out through your urethra,
Yeah, me too. Oh, me too for years.
I said, okay.
Yeah, me too. And then I went home to my mother. I had written a book about the vagina with the word vagina in every sentence. It got published in England by Virago. I went home to my mom, and she said, no, there are only 2 holes, honey. You're wrong. It's just the urethra and the butthole.
That's what I thought. I couldn't figure out what that thing in the middle was.
No.
How did I get here?
Isn't that
Mom?
Amazing?
It's not the same passage.
But was your mom awake when she had you?
No. Notably.
Mine wasn't
No.
either.
She was knocked out.
Yeah.
Was she awake when you were conceived?
Yeah. Not either. No.
Well, I think she was out of body, to be honest. I mean, she's the daughter of a priest.
Right.
Her father
wow.
chose her husband. She was a virgin. She was 18. She wasn't even clear about what the penis was or what it looked like or what its job was. No one had told her anything. And she was terrified. So I think she just kind of like said her prayers and went out of body and let things happen. And I was conceived like within the first week. I don't think she knew anything.
It's a little heartbreaking, huh?
Yeah, it is. And she only has known my dad her whole life. And that's it.
How does she feel about, sorry, I really want to know about you now. How does she feel about your books and your writing?
Well, they're so good. That generation, and maybe we are too, I don't know, but that generation that's more controlled by religion are very good at dissociating. So she's very, she excels at it. She's like, I'm so proud of you. I love your work. If she would come to like my art show openings and she would see like a big vagina stitched and she'd be like, that's my favorite piece. It reminds me of like a spider web. She did not have a concept at all that this was a pussy. It just didn't register.
Weren't they titles?
So she's a perfect example of like the dichotomy.
Yeah.
No, she doesn't speak English. So it's, she never had to read the books because I must admit, I did not allow them to be translated in Greek.
Right. Because?
So they've been translated in many other languages, but I was just like, no to the Greek.
Why?
To spare my parents
There you go.
and the family.
There you go. That's it. A little bit of shame.
People find them and calling my mom and dad and saying, oh my God.
Your daughter's writing porn.
Yeah. What is this thing about the vagina?
Yeah.
You protected them. I think that's lovely.
Yeah, I did protect them.
Do you protect? Yeah, or yourself? I mean, honestly, I
both.
think everything's about us.
I didn't
Maybe.
really. Nah.
Really?
Yeah, because I don't live there.
Yeah.
So I would have gone for a summer visit, and I really don't care what
you don't
their
care.
friends. No. Well, I did protect them. Yeah, that's definitely
Oh,
accurate.
you're good. I used to
And
send
I
it
did
to
not try to proselytize them. I don't believe in changing people. So that too.
don't believe in changing people?
Mm-mm.
Wow.
Mm-mm.
I do.
Don't.
I do. I think we become a greater example of what we are as we grow older. But I do because I've seen transformation in myself. And
Me too. Me too. I believe in our own self-change. I just don't, like to take it upon myself to change another.
I absolutely believe that.
They'd have to be ready. They'd have
Yeah.
to want.
Yeah.
Somebody
Exactly.
wants to know, absolutely.
It's
But
not
for-
your job or
Yes.
responsibility.
Yeah.
I've lived with a lot of alcoholics. And I love myself an alcoholic. And it's true.
Ladies and gentlemen.
That's a great short story title.
Oh my God.
Or maybe novel.
I might too, actually.
They're fun until they're not fun.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I don't feel responsible to change any of them. It's
Exactly.
not my story.
Yeah.
It's not my story, But it obviously my story to find one.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with one. So they say that if you're the child of an addict or an alcoholic, whatever the story is, that because you're being held by that person, that smell becomes mother's milk.
Wow.
And so you recognize it. You smell it in a potential mate, and then that's home.
Yeah.
For you.
Oh, I hear that. Yeah, it's clearly very edible.
Yeah.
You smell that kind of like manly sweat mixed with scotch or
It is a
and you're
particular
like,
smell.
ooh, love.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's home for me. So but I don't feel responsible for it.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
at
And I
all.
also just, resent the whole missionary approach. Again, that starts from Christianity.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that I don't in any way practice that, that I don't take it upon myself to say, okay, what I think is right and you're wrong. So you have to change and practice what I think is best for you. I stay away from that judgment.
Certainly Star and I have talked about that, about it's never the message, it's the messenger. So about how you get across a message, what I'm referring to in general about beliefs. And
you embody it.
yeah.
And that's,
Yeah, you
and
embody
that's
it.
nice. Yeah.
Yeah, but not pushing your beliefs so hard that you can't hear anything else, because that's a form of
well, and it's
censorship.
Yeah.
yes.
And it's the judgment part that's so difficult. I personally struggle with this because I always feel like, well, I know the better way.
Yeah.
And I do it especially with men, and I find it to be really, really destructive. And the older I get, I really try and sit in your behavior is information for me, and then I get to choose how I go forth with this person, as opposed to don't behave this way will be a better way to be.
We all think we're right.
Yeah,
that way.
We?
Yeah. So I'm just going back to those courses. So there's a couple that I'm sure you know, out of California. There's Badanskis, but anyway, they've written lots of books. And they were represented on Sex and the City as the older couple. They go and have a class with the girls and orgasm. And there's the books called Extended Massive Orgasm. So I had a lot of that around about these 1 hour orgasms, and I watched them doing it.
Okay, so describe it in detail, please.
Oh my word! So
tell everybody.
I've forgotten her first name, but Badansky. It's a couple, and she's quite a bit older than her husband, and so she was an older woman when I was watching her. She must have been in her 70s when I was observing her, and she lies on a table. Her husband sits next to her, and she's naked, and there's a video camera usually very close to her vagina, and all of us in the class standing around watching this thing as he rubs her. And he rubs her to orgasm, and then she orgasms through we were there, at least an hour. So she orgasms through this while it's all explained and videotaped, and the engorgement and the orgasm and the peaks and troughs and such. So it's
And then do you each take turns to orgasm her?
No, we didn't. They offered to do it to me, but my husband's only proviso was that nobody touches me that wasn't him. So I didn't do it, but they certainly, have offered many times. It's called rubbing. And that's Mama Gina's big thing, is that people rub. And there are classes, I don't know about here, but there are groups in London that meet once a week, and the women anonymously, or you can bring a partner, lie down, and the man rubs her for 15 minutes usually, I think the sessions are. And it's all about her pleasure. He doesn't come into it at all. It's only about the woman and sort of learning the vulva and learning the bits and pieces. And I have a friend that does that every week. He's a doctor, and he goes,
rubber.
He's a rubber. He's a Dr. Rubber, and
what does he get out of it?
Her pleasure.
Kind of like a little voyeuristic thing, maybe.
It's interesting because that has a negative connotation in a way to me.
No, I don't mean it.
Okay, you don't.
I
know
mean
you
it
don't.
negatively. I just mean since he doesn't get to jerk off at the same time, he must get some pleasure. He's not doing it.
I guess so.
Selflessly.
When my daughter was young, we used to talk about blowjobs a lot. I got into a whole rant about it. I have unhappiness about teenager girls and blowjobs.
Yeah,
because all centered on the boy's pleasure.
I agree,
and it upsets me. These girls, I'm a virgin, but so their pleasure never comes into it. So I started when my daughter was very young, talking about that. Unfortunately, I probably went too far, and maybe I put her off for a while. He's always going to come. The man's always going to have pleasure, and yet most women don't.
Yeah, I always did the same thing too. I mean, she was like not even 12. And I was like, if you hear about the blowjobs, just tell everybody you don't give it unless you get it. You give it after you get it. They eat you out, you eat them out.
We are on the same page.
So she's heard this tens of thousands of times. It's like second nature.
Yeah, I said it's all about your pleasure, honey. Yeah. Don't worry about them. They're taken care of.
Yeah, they're done. You just both. You reciprocate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was in the feminist stage. It's all about her. But, because I know they're always going to take care of themselves.
But, there is, I don't know what they have in England, but there is something in America. I actually did attend a couple of meetings. There are two different groups, but basically one is the, oh, my God, yes. And by now it's kind of like a Ponzi scheme, in my opinion, because they charge like $5,000, $8,000, and you take these seminars, and it's extremely clinical and extremely organized. They have these gorgeous girls, and in outfits a little bit, in my opinion, it's a little bit like handmaidens.
Oh, wow.
But they don't think of it that way, but it feels like that. And they they give specific instruction as to how to stimulate the clitoris manually. So they sell their own pillows, they sell their own boosters, they sell their own little blankie. So you have to follow the exact protocol in order to kind of separate it from, let's say, free sex. And the idea is that this way the woman is not getting taken advantage of, or you don't get like creeps in there or whatever, because everybody has to pay. But the way I experienced it, it's extremely clinical, and I don't see why it costs so much. Like, I feel like it should just be a free service.
It's business. Yeah, Gina's the same way now. Vagina.
And then they are supposed to have groups, so that once you graduate, and I don't remember the exact stages, but it's like stage 1, 2, 3, and then you're ready. And then in at least the main 2 centers, like New York, LA, they have places, safe places where a woman can go, and the man any man will go and meet her and stimulate her. I just find it too neat. To me, it takes again sex into a direction that's not that's too prescribed and too controlled and too limited. Because if the woman wants to get eaten out, she can't. It's against the rules. If the guy wants to, gets a hard on and wants to tell her, do you want to do something for me? Like, give me a hand job. It's against the rules. And they call it meditation. It's an orgasmic meditation.
I think this is the same group I'm referring to in London.
I think so too.
Yeah. How would you do it? How would you, in your ideal world, have a school for sex or intimacy?
Well, in my ideal world, I would start very young.
Yeah.
So in my ideal world, I would put this in the curriculum from like kindergarten.
Yeah.
And, Rye class, Montessori, the whole thing. I would introduce it from the beginning when we learn the language skills and we learn the names of things, when we learn what to do with our hands and motor skills, how to walk and how to put things in their boxes, introduce sexuality too. So we can free it from this, 2,000 years of shame and darkness. I think that by the time we get to be our age, it's just so much more work because you have to unlearn.
Yeah, to disassemble.
Untrain. Yeah.
As opposed to assembling with care. Yeah.
It is.
I like that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it would be so simple to just, allow children to touch each other and, without feeling that, the 3-year-old boy is going to, objectify, assault the 3-year-old girl, right? And explain to them what works, what doesn't work, what consent is, why the girl gets to consent in exchange for the fact that she gets to get pregnant. Very simple, basic, rules. And again, in my ideal world, if we take this to its kind of like logical conclusion, the children are not going to be named by their father's names, and we're not going to be named by our father's or husband's name, and the whole patriarchy system will crumble.
Removing the patriarchy. I think it's happening slowly now. I mean, my children who are 23 and 25, my daughter especially, is like, I don't know if I ever need to get married. And if she got married, I don't think she'd ever take somebody else's name. So I think things are changing now.
Yeah. I never took anybody's name. I mean, I don't even use my father's name because I feel about it the same way I would feel about a husband's name. Yeah.
So you use your mother's last name?
I don't use my last name. I mean, part of the beauty for me is that I have a Greek name, So it's very recognizable in Greece, but I spell it in a unfamiliar way here. No one else in my family spells it this way, and I only use it in like banking and whatever. I don't use it in my work. I don't
That's
sign
great.
my books or my art or any of my work with it. Yeah,
I love that.
yeah. And because, growing up, my dad would always say, you represent me. Whatever you do, speaks for me.
Maybe that's why you came abroad.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
I left.
so you
I
could
left
create-
my entire continent when I
Yeah.
was 15.
You want your own voice.
Yeah, I think going to England was very much that for me because my family was very well known in South Florida, and I love that. I'm very proud of what I come from, but I was an extension of them, not
Exactly.
me. And England was a chance just to do my own thing without worrying about, creating a fuss, about the family name and yeah. So I think very much kids that come away from their home have that opportunity to become more themselves. But the sex thing, interesting, was under my maiden name, and my husband wasn't happy about it. He really wanted his name. That took me took me a long time to bend to that, to using his
Interesting.
name. Yeah, and then it meant more to him than it did to me in the end. So it's all about compromise in a marriage. I had a very happy marriage, but these courses were a lot of it. I'm a widow now,
Oh,
and
okay.
it really sparked our lives. It was an opportunity, and it wasn't him. I really take total responsibility for problems that we might have had about communication because I wasn't taught the words, and then I was said the words were shameful. And I realized that men, I really believe, want to give pleasure. They really want us to be happy, I think, for the most part. We just have to express how to do that.
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. That's it. Basically,
you have
I
to tell
feel
them.
that we have to tell them.
Wow. And that's hard. First off, know what you want, and then be able to say those things out loud without shame, and then accept them. Or not, if they don't do them, accept that. You've told them and they still don't do it.
Yeah.
But I found once I said what worked for me, oh my God, it just opened up a whole new area. And I've known my husband since I was 20. I met him when I was very young. And he was, by this stage, I was in my late 30s, probably almost 40 by the time I did these classes. And it was a whole new area of our lives. We fell so much more in love. And
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is so
well,
lovely.
you knew him.
Yeah.
He was super charming.
Yeah,
He was a dude.
So it really did change your sex life.
Completely changed things. I mean, it was a 180 because of me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was always willing. I was just,
Well, I learned, and this is interesting. Again, looking back, I learned how to describe sexual things from all the, subcultures, the tiny sexual subcultures that I wrote pieces on, for Spin magazine. So I would go to San Francisco and hang out with like lesbian women who liked cutting, that they would orgasm, by cutting, or S&M, different types of like S&M and dungeon sexual lives, or cross-dressers or whatever. It was an endless. But they had words for everything, and we don't. The heteronormative vast majority, we don't have any words. We assume that the guy will come like fully knowledgeable and equipped because he's got the penis.
Because he's got a penis,
Right.
And by
Yeah.
virtue of this
And
penis,
he's done it a few times, yeah.
right? And he knows how to please us, and we just have to lie there
Yeah.
and be willing. But like even the gay culture, but especially these, smaller sexual subcultures, the further you go from the dominant sexual,
Heteronormative.
heteronormative culture, the more words they have for everything.
It's like such a brilliant observation. I absolutely never thought of it that way, but I can see it 100%. Wow. 100%.
Exactly. And they negotiate because, again, there's so few of them. So it's not like, they have to find someone And then they sit down and they negotiate. They say, this is my hard limit, this is my soft limit, this is what I like more, and they call it a scene. And they describe what they're going to do before they do it.
Which is such a turn on.
Nothing like it. I know, right?
Yeah, that is
turn off, right?
On. No,
on. I think it's on.
Turn off.
Oh no, it's a total turn on. The first time I kissed a woman in front of, I kissed. She was an Israeli soldier, former Israeli soldier,
Ooh.
and
That's hot.
I know. And even though I'd gone to girls' schools, I'd never had a scene with a girl. And so for this course that I was taking,
we had classmates that did.
Yeah, we had certainly
plenty.
gay classmates that, although they may not have been out at the time.
Right.
It was a men's course. I was a courtesan, and there were 30 guys taking a day's course about how to pleasure women. And I was a courtesan in this course, so I walked around in my skimpy little balcon bra and a G-string and a long gown all day serving these guys. And in the afternoon, I was asked to kiss this woman, to show men how to kiss, just the beginning of the kiss, not the kiss itself, just like how to if you put your hand down just like this, instead of going like this, you just going up to it, And I had never kissed a woman. Anyway, this woman, before we had our kiss, she said, we're going to do this negotiation, I guess, and we're going to talk about it before I kiss you. That rocked my world, it was an incredible experience, her just talking me through what was going to happen to me on this stage. And it was much more exciting than the actual kiss, the talking about it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And boy, you could have heard a pin drop when we did it. We were up on a little stage in our underpants doing this thing, just trying to, and we actually never really had much of a kiss, but it was the whole pulling in, pulling out, eye contact, like a negotiation, a dance.
Mm-hmm. The mating dance.
Oh my God.
Don't you both find that a kiss is so absolutely so personal? I mean, I find being kissed and being turned on by a kiss so powerful.
Oh.
Even more than intercourse.
Agreed, yeah.
It's just...
Yeah.
It's more intimate.
It's so much more intimate.
Well, it's so interesting that prostitutes, have sex without kissing.
Right.
That's
right.
interesting. And how you can be so turned off as well.
Oh,
so that's what this afternoon was about. Was not what's right or wrong, but how to read it, your partner, how to be slow, and that. So yeah. And these guys were so grateful. So one of the things this woman talked about was having a course for teenagers, but it was a licensing issue for her. We wanted to start classes sort of for 16-year-olds, so could start somewhere. But she just, and I would have done anything to get my son on that course.
Yeah,
my boy, because why should they know? We don't even know what we look like, for the most part. Why would a boy know what's inside the package?
Nobody knows. Nobody knows anything.
Yeah.
And now the boys are at even greater disadvantage than before because they still know nothing,
and they have
except
porn.
they can always be accused of rape, and they're not sure how to tell when is what, and they are all defensive.
Yeah, so I have a friend that's a producer in L.A., and she said the thing you do not want to be right now is a straight white man in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
They're terrified. They're terrified of going out, and I'm not saying it's anyone's fault, but I think, we're all so unsure.
Well, they are all sexist pigs by definition. But, no, I mean, they are. But we have enabled
Tell
that.
it, sister. Tell it.
Right? Yeah. But we are enabling that, and we are giving it permission, so we can't go both ways. That's just my feeling. If you sleep with someone, and if it feels to you like date rape, and you really don't want to do it, but it's easier than like screaming and yelling and calling the cops, and you just close your eyes and get through it, and you hated it, Or if you sleep with someone because you want a job and you really hated it, but you're like, whatever, I'll live through it. If you do that, you can't then 5 years or 10 years or 15 years later change your mind and sue. You can speak up the truth, but you can't actually expect, retribution because you already made a choice.
Yeah.
And the same thing with like the rest of the vast experience of monetizing sex. if you're gonna turn sex into provider sex, if you need to get wined and dined and someone pay for your movie before you sleep with them, right? Then of course you're turning them into a sexist pig. Like if you want somebody to buy you shoes and purses because you're, giving them sex, then you're participating in this system. Like we can't have both. Either we become equal sexual partners, and again, by example, we show men how we want respect and we respect them back, and this is just about the sexual pleasure and nothing else. Or we enable them to be sexist in their treatment of us, and then keep quiet about it.
Well, I don't know. I think, and I'm going to kind of fall back on my very strongly feminist daughter that Shannon knows well. I think there is a period of time before women understand really what they can and cannot do. They may be young and not have the experience or the words or the personal strength to stand up. So I don't think it's always so black and white. I think in some cases women do feel completely intimidated and they're just not strong enough. I can't in that instance kind of blame the woman. I mean, I think for any of us, I think we're all pretty well educated on this subject, and if I did, then
I'm not sure what are we, give me an example of what you're saying. Blaming.
Well, okay, so there's this young woman I know who in high school felt pressured to have sex, and not intercourse, but kind of early-ish sex with a boy, and he pressured her. And she felt really bad and icky about it, but she didn't have the way to stop it just because of her own insecurity. And just recently, this boy approached her, young man, and said, "I hear you've been saying some things about me." And she had discussed this with other friends of hers who knew this young man. And she was really afraid to have kind of the confrontive conversation because at the time she really did feel like she didn't have a choice. They ended up having a beautiful conversation about it, and he said, "You were right. I did pressure you, and I knew it was wrong at the time." So, I think that's maybe one example. Of course, she was young, so it's, but I think I can see it happening with women not so strong, not so educated. We live in a culture
I think it
where
happens
there's so many different
to all of
kinds.
us.
All of us.
And I believe that it's good to talk about it.
Must.
Even 5, 10, 20, 30 years later. I'm just saying that the issue with Hollywood is
suing and money.
Yeah.
And,
which again, if it's within the stretch of the legal limits, it's great because the more publicity, the more we talk about it, the more all of us are informed about what is okay and what's not okay, and we kind of respect our bodies more, and we, I think, unite with our bodies more.
Were you not very careful with your daughter when she was growing up about situations you put her into? I know I was not wanting to. So my son had impetigo, and I was in America, and I took him to a pediatrician, and the moment I walked into that pediatrician's office, it's like I'd hit a brick wall. All this, I'd had a bad experience when I was 13 in that pediatrician's office, and I totally blocked it. And it came, and I blocked it not only for myself, but I certainly hadn't told my parents that this guy had molested me, that this pediatrician molested me.
The very same?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was just I then as a result, I was very aware of my daughter being in positions, or certainly talking to her a lot about speaking up, or telling me anything whenever she was uncomfortable. So it is important for us to.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I never left her alone with a pediatrician.
No. Well, our parents, I was getting my ears pierced. My parents didn't think anything. And my mom, when she was, just before she passed away, I talked to her about a lot of things to do with some religious people, and things that she came out with of her own experience that none of us had ever talked about. Very similar experiences with the religious. And it's such a shame, things we should have told our mothers, or our mothers should have told us. And now, hopefully we do,
Yeah.
talk about that and not make it so shameful, not
Right.
our fault, or because most of these people are intimidating us, aren't they? Because they're in
Power.
powerful
It's a power
position.
position.
Yeah.
Well, I wish I'd done a better job
Oh.
with my daughter. I do.
Oh.
It's
She's
the truth.
an incredible girl.
Yeah.
Can we draw a line under that? Because she's an amazing woman. I think all of us, have been raised incredible, because they're on our shoulders. Our children, they're definitely standing on our shoulders, and we on our mothers.
Oh, that's so lovely.
Yeah,
Really?
it's
Great
beautiful.
metaphor. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, if we make it more conscious, I think that's the ultimate goal, to make sex more conscious and less, unaware, much more aware and conscious. And then we can change, everything.
That's your message. I can really hear that.
Yeah.
About
I love that.
consciousness, education. It's so interesting. Just part of the conversation. Not nudge, nudge, giggle, giggle.
Right. And also kind of, unite with ourselves. Because I think that even for me, there was a moment when I realized, yes, I was a feminist, and I identified as a post-feminist, whatever. I mean, I had these ideas about, my own agency and freedom and power over men, and I was always a top. But
what do you mean by that?
I mean, I was I like to be the one in charge,
Right,
in sex,
right. Dominant.
So yes,
right.
I was always the dominant one, and was willing to do anything so long as it was dominating. So I thought, oh, I'm like a liberated woman, and it took me so many years until recently to realize that in a way, I continued this dichotomy because I was not connected with my body. It's almost like I was pimping my own body for my own pleasure, right? So like I would have sex and then like look in the mirror at my body and that would turn me on, or so I wasn't me. Like I wasn't me.
Yeah, you were a character.
I wasn't integrated.
Right.
Yeah, I was still a character.
Yeah. Character in your own. Isn't that interesting? Because if I'm honest, I'm the reverse. And maybe that's in life too. I love being led. I mean, I want to say, but I love being taken care of. Star Wolf tell you that. I love being taken care of. I love the dominant.
But it's disassociative. Again, back to the word you used to describe your
Right.
mother.
Yeah.
It's this detachment. In fact, I find the best sex is when I'm able to integrate myself. And most of the time, I see myself having sex. I watch myself having sex. I feel myself having sex, but I'm not always like immersed. And the times that I am, it's unbelievable. But it's not often.
That you're out of your
Not
head.
often enough that I'm out of my head. It's out of your head.
Yeah.
That's being out of your head, not being an observer.
Right. Exactly.
Even though you're participating, it's more like you know what I mean. Well, it's what you said.
Yeah,
Exactly.
being there with your full essence, but not from outside looking in.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's all a film.
Yeah.
How do we do that?
Yeah.
Got to work on that.
That's
right?
That's what we want to do.
Well, I think it's what this conversation's about.
Yeah.
It's the consciousness that you just talked about.
Yeah.
It's getting
Love
together as women. We were talking about this the other day, forming the Vagina Club, the Pussy Posse, the Cliteratti. The
Cliteratti.
That's what we are.
That's the word. The Cliteratti.
The Cliteratti Society.
Yeah.
T-shirts, ladies.
Lucky Sperm Club. We're all part of that. That's what we really like. More joy. I'm all about having fun right now, ladies. I am so
100%.
into.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
We talked about that earlier before you all got here.
Let's
Let's have fun.
Kind of
God's sake.
out there with that, and I know I'm drawing that because you draw, whatever you're putting out, and drawing that. Become friends with many stars friends now that are great fun. I just want to drop the old. Anyway,
Right.
We are the pussy posse. And I had a little pussy posse in London. So I went through this progression. I had a meditation group, and we met for a few years, and that was great. And then doing all this, I formed a pussy posse, and we'd meet every week and just talk about our pussies. And then now I've got something called the Spooners. And my mom started it. It's the long-handled spoon society. You get to the bottom of the stew where all the good stuff is, and you stir it up. So the Spooners meet regularly. We travel together. We talk. We don't do anything of, charity or merit. We just, about being a loving, supportive. Yeah, we feed ourselves with the good, juicy stuff. And our daughters, the teaspoons. We're the big mama spoons, and they're the teaspoons. And they've, so that's, I'm all about forming a group of supportive, loving, open, honest women. I'd love to include men, but that's, not where I am right now so much. If they want to listen, great.
Exactly. Yeah.
Fab.
Yeah.
I'm not ashamed.
Yeah.
Well, that's what this hour is about. Are you listening, men?
Hello, men.
We're talking to you.
Hello, Shannon.
Well, and the main thing that I want to tell everyone is that it gets better. It gets better. The more you talk about it, the more you do it, the more you free yourself.
Yeah.
And, allow yourself to say yes. It gets better.
I just said that. My mother used to say to me, don't say no. You form a lot of wrinkles in your face. Say yes.
Yes.
And so I
say
try.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. So had that conversation with a few people recently. Just say yes.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good place to come to a conclusion.
Thank you.
The
God,
Say Yes
fun.
episode.
The Say Yes of the Cliteratti Club.
Form your own, ladies.
Get in line.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. This was another episode of Speak Sex. I'm Eurydice. We'll see you next Friday.
That was fun.